Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also maybe even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it's not, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. So in my 7 or 8 years of teaching fertility charting, I have seen a cycle, and it's a very common cycle where it starts when you're young. It starts when a woman or a young woman is, let's say, 16, and she's experiencing really bad acne or irregular periods or really painful periods. These are really, really common things to be experiencing, even more common now than they ever used to be, especially at this age. And they go to the doctor puts them on the pill. And the pill does a really good job of helping those symptoms for some people, right? I'm never here denying that. It clearly, the reason that women are on it for decades is because it can do a really good job of helping those symptoms. But the cycle that I see is these young ladies, these young women are put on the pill at such a young age, and it's just something they've become used to. They don't even know their bodies. They don't know themselves off of the pill. They've never experienced that. And in this time of adolescence, when they are still a teenager, their body is still developing their reproductive system. It's not in its mature stage yet. It's not in a mature fertility age. And so they've never known their bodies to be at a mature fertility. They've never known their bodies without being on the pill. And so in this cycle, they stay on the pill for 10, 15 years. They get married down the road, and then one day they want to have a baby. And so being on the pill for so long, they decide to get off the pill. Some women are blessed and genuinely just lucky enough to be able to have no issue with that. They don't have an issue getting pregnant right away. And praise be to God. That's great. That's awesome. Other women, though, have a different story. They've suppressed their ovulation for so many years. And especially if they got on the pill when they were a teenager, their body never had a chance to develop itself into a mature fertility age. And so having been on the pill, having had their ovulation suppressed and those natural ebb and flow of hormones suppressed for so long, it can take some time for the body to bounce back from that and to be able to have a healthy fertility again to the point where they can become pregnant. And so I've noticed this cycle in my years of teaching where the pill, obviously, we all know, is just kind of a norm at this point in our society. And whether it is for the sake of medicine and managing symptoms, or if it's for the sake of contracepting, it's just become a norm. And I was just sitting down with a client the other day. I had just met her, incredibly wonderful woman, lovely lady. And this was more or less her story. She had been on the pill for a really long time and just never really knew her body off of the pill. She, however, never had issues getting pregnant, which is great. I'm really, really glad that she never had issues. She has 3 kids and whenever she got off the pill to get pregnant, she got pregnant right away. Great. Had the baby, got right back on the pill. So she's never really had a chance to learn her body being off the pill. Now, she sought help from me because she decided that she doesn't want the pill anymore. I think right now we're starting to see a culture shift in, especially with wanting to be healthier in our food consumption and in the vitamins that we take and in the medications that we take. We're starting to become more aware of the chemicals in those foods and to become more cognizant of what foods do I actually want to put into my body, and is it going to be healthy for me? And so along with that, along with wanting to be more organic and healthier and taking away those preservatives, chemicals, all that stuff, I am starting to notice a shift with women wanting a different option rather than the pill, because we are starting to recognize just how bad the pill is for us. And to give you just one of many examples for this, I mean, the mechanism of the pill, no matter the reason you're taking it, whether it is for health reasons or for contraceptive reasons, it's doing the same thing. And so the main mode is that it's suppressing your ovulation, right? Especially for the sake of a contraceptive, if there's no ovulation, where an egg is released from the ovary, if that's not happening, then if there's no egg, there's no baby. And that's the idea of it, right? And so, but in order to suppress that action of ovulation, there has to be some sort of hormonal shift. And so that's what the pill is offering. And when I say pill, by the way, I'm really meaning all types of hormonal contraception. So that can also include like the Mirena IUD, where it's a hormonal IUD. It could be the Nexplanon implant. It could be the Depo-Provera shot, or whatever sort of hormonal contraceptive out there. They're all doing something very similar with these hormone suppressions, where what's actually causing ovulation is this hormone ebb and flow, a natural hormone ebb and flow that should be happening every single menstrual cycle. But with the pill or any other hormonal contraceptive, it's giving you synthetic versions of those hormones to actually halt or pause temporarily or permanently that action of ovulation. Now, the second mode of the pill is that it will also dry up all of your cervical fluid. I have so many podcast episodes where I talk about cervical fluid or cervical mucus, so I'll link those down below. The purpose of this episode isn't necessarily to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but just know that it is 100% necessary for the woman's body to be producing that cervical fluid or that cervical mucus in order to achieve pregnancy. It is virtually impossible for a woman to get pregnant if she is not producing that cervical fluid, cervical mucus, also known as discharge, right? That's an incredibly important and vital aspect of the ability to get pregnant. And so with those synthetic hormones that the pill is offering, those hormones will actually halt the production of that fluid within your cervix, and it kind of just dries it all up. And so therefore, the possibility of pregnancy is also lowered because of that fact. Sperm need cervical mucus to survive in order to be able to reach far enough to fertilize the egg. And so if there's no mucus there, there's no sustaining of the sperm from an active intercourse. I'll leave it at that. If you want to learn more about cervical fluid, I will link that in the description below, because I do find that incredibly fascinating. So that's the second mode. But the third mode, and really the most alarming mode of action for the pill, is that it thins the uterine lining. Okay, why is this alarming? Well, when a woman gets pregnant, that fertilization or that conception, when the egg and the sperm come together, that happens in the outer third of the fallopian tube. So when ovulation is happening, that egg is being released from the ovary. The fallopian tube kind of sweeps that egg inside of it, and it takes a few days for that egg to travel through. Now, if the egg is fertilized by a sperm cell, that fertilization, that moment of conception, is going to happen within the fallopian tube. Then it takes about a week for that newly formed life life to travel through the fallopian tube and then eventually implant into the uterine lining. And the uterine lining is a bunch of blood cells. And so when you have your period, it's actually this uterine lining that's being shed. That's the bleeding that you see. It's basically the inside wall of the uterus. And every single cycle, this inside wall thickens. And when it's thickening, it is legitimately preparing your body for a new life, to sustain a new life. And what's also really fascinating about this uterine lining is there's also fluid that's released from within the lining, and it's filled with nutrients. And so not only is that uterine lining there to hold that new life, to continue to sustain it, but it's also giving that new life the nutrients it needs, especially in this very early time of pregnancy. It's giving the embryo the nutrients that he or she needs in order to continue to live and thrive and grow within his or her mother's womb. And so if that uterine lining is thinned, what can happen is if the first and second modes of the pill or of the hormonal contraceptives, if they fail, which means if ovulation does happen, and if the sperm was able to reach that egg and result in conception, that newly conceived cell, that is a brand new human life. We know per science that new one-celled human being has its a completely separate DNA from the mother's. Sure, it's still completely reliant on the mother. What newborn isn't completely reliant on his or her mother, right? That new formed life is a brand new human life. Very own DNA, separate from the mother's. It is its very own life. That life takes about a week, 7 to 10 days to travel through the fallopian tube. Once that embryo, once that baby enters the uterus, if that uterine lining is thinned, if it's too thin for that embryo, that human life to implant, that human life will not be able to continue to live, which results in the death of that baby. And this can happen. The real injustice with this is that it can happen without the mother even knowing. And this is just one of the many horrendous things that the pill does to our bodies that we take unknowingly. No one that I teach fertility charting to, rarely. I've never met anyone who has been told by their doctor when they were prescribed the pill that this could happen. This is incredible injustice that's being done. And there's a consent that's not being given there. And so when I very gently, very graciously, very charitably, but in justice, when I tell my clients that this is the mode of the pill, it just lights this fire of why have I never known this? And even setting that aside, even just when I teach somebody about their bodies, the way that their body is meant to work, the way that their hormones should ebb and flow throughout the cycle, and everything that's being done in conjunction with each other in response to these hormones, it is amazing what the woman's body is capable of doing. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And we're not taught this, but instead, whenever we present some sort of hormonal reproductive issue, we're given a medication to suppress those hormones, to suppress that natural, beautiful ebb and flow that our bodies are meant to have. And so what do we do with this information, right? Like, what is the next step then? Because for the girl that's going to the doctor with horrible acne and painful acne, or maybe she's having painful periods where she's calling out of school like at least once a month, we can't leave them there. we can't leave them there. That's no way to live. But if the pill is not actually solving the problem, if it's just putting a Band-Aid on the issue, because I'm telling you right now, the second that girl gets off the pill, no matter when she does that, whether it's a year later, 10 years later, a month later, those symptoms are going to come crawling back and probably even worse than they were, because it's not getting to the root of the issue. So what is the option? Well, the option is charting your cycle. And here's why. When you're charting your cycle, you are looking specifically at different signs that your body is showing you throughout your cycle to tell you what your hormones are doing. And you can look at a typical cycle and you can look and see what it should be doing, when you should be producing that cervical fluid in conjunction with what hormones should be dominant and high and low at different times of the cycle. We can look and see, okay, if this is our blueprint, if this is what should be happening, what does your chart look like? Is your chart showing something different? Because when there's something off, when there's an incredible amount of spotting or brown bleeding, or your cycle is 50 days long, or you're having incredible pain, or you're not producing any cervical fluid when you should be, these are all signs that there is something wrong. Now, where do we move from there? Because charting isn't the treatment, it's actually part of the diagnosis. I work with doctors that can see this data on a chart. Your fertility chart is data. It is precious data, you guys. It's data that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So we're looking at this chart, we're looking at this data, and then this is where I end and a doctor begins. But a doctor who's able to read that fertility chart can look at that chart and say, okay, here's where we go from here. Here's the type of blood work that I want you to get, and here's the day or days that I want you to get it. Here's the ultrasound that we're going to do, and here's the day or days that we're going to get it. And here's, they'll give you more diagnostic things that are much more targeted to a specific time of your cycle in order to understand your cycle way better than just blindly going into it. And I'll give you an example. So let's say I'm working with a woman who has a 50-day cycle, or 40 or 30, whatever, a longer cycle, 40, 50 days. And we want to test her progesterone levels. We want to see, okay, how is her progesterone doing? How is her body doing producing its own progesterone? Well, progesterone is a hormone that doesn't rise until after ovulation. And when you have a long cycle like that, typically your ovulation is not going to happen until later in the cycle. We're often told that ovulation happens around day 14. Well, that's great when you have a beautiful 28-day cycle. But for women who have longer cycles or irregular cycles, hands down, your ovulation is not happening on day 14. Which means that when we're testing for progesterone, we can't just test it on any random given day, because before ovulation, progesterone should be low. It should be near non-existent, because it does not have any sort of place in the pre-ovulation phase of your cycle. But post-ovulation, it is the main player. It is the dominant hormone, and it needs to rise and stay high. So when you're charting, a doctor can look at your chart and say, okay, here is around the time that you're ovulating based on your charting. Because on your chart, we can locate around the time of when you're ovulating. And so for a woman whose cycles are longer, that's probably going to be not until day 30, 40, 50 that she's actually ovulating, which means that her progesterone isn't going to actually rise until day 33, 45, 56, whatever day it is, right? It's not going to happen until later. So if we test for that progesterone too early, if we test for it before ovulation is actually happening, then we're going to get a false reading. Progesterone is going to say it's low, because it should be low before ovulation. So that's just one way that we can target when to get proper blood work done is if we can understand when you are ovulating, then we can have a clear understanding of here's when to do this blood work, here's when to do that ultrasound, here's when to do these different diagnostic tools, further diagnostic tools to then get you proper diagnosis, which then leads to proper treatment. And I'll tell you right now, when I was 16 years old and I went to the doctor with irregular periods, there was no questions asked. I was put on the pill. No questions asked. No blood work done. No ultrasound. No diagnostic tools of any kind were done. It was just, hey, what kind of pill do you want? Now, for me, the pill made me incredibly moody, which it does for a lot of women. And so I didn't stay on it for very long. And a few years down the road, I learned how to chart my cycle. And I saw a doctor that knew how to read that chart. And I got properly diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I got properly treated for that. And because of that whole journey, I now have the 3 incredible children that I have with my husband. So this is the story that I want for these women in this endless cycle of let's put you on the pill and let's stay on the pill. And then when you're ready to have kids, let's get off of the pill. But oh, by the way, those horrible symptoms you were experiencing beforehand in your teenage years, when we put you on the pill, those are going to come raging back. Oh, and by the way, because you haven't actually ovulated in 10 years, you might have trouble conceiving because your body isn't used to having that natural ebb and flow, monthly ovulation that it should be happening. And I don't want that story for anyone, which is why I started this podcast. Because this information cannot just be locked up anymore. It's an injustice for this information to be locked up. It must be shared. And it must be shared to the point where people are making a difference with it, where we are getting girls off the pill, where we're not even getting them on the pill in the first place. Let's get your stuff fixed now so you are healthy. Let's get you healthy. Let's get you charting your cycle. Let's start with that data collection. Let's start with that proper diagnosis so we can get to the root of what is giving you these unwanted symptoms so that you no longer have it, so that you are healthy, so that your hormones, your estrogen and your progesterone are taking its turns, that they are ebbing and flowing as they should, and that ovulation is happening regularly, which means that your period is happening regularly. This is the way our bodies were made, and they were created to work and to act. And why are we not helping, giving actual help to these girls, to these women that are screaming for help? Why are we just giving them a Band-Aid? They deserve so much more. You deserve so much more than just a Band-Aid. You deserve to know what is going on with your body, and you deserve to be healthy. No matter who you are, no matter what you're doing right now. And I'm getting so passionate about it because you guys, this is serious and it's real. And it's the reason I have my children. And it's the reason that I teach this is because I want you to know this information, that injustice not one word injustice, but in space justice, in due justice, you are meant to know this information. And it should no longer be hidden from you. You're meant to know it. So I didn't go super deep dive into a lot of this biological stuff because that's not the purpose of this episode. The purpose of this episode is to get you pumped because I'm getting pumped just talking about it. But if you're interested in learning more about different ways that your body is meant to have this ebb and flow of hormones and the cervical fluid that I talked about, I have plenty of other podcast episodes that I would love for you to listen to become just more knowledgeable and more aware of the way your body is made and it's supposed to work. And if you're sitting here going, man, I need to know how to chart my cycle. I need to learn how to do this. Well, I invite you to go to truthinfertility.com and to book an intro session with me. I will give you all the details on how to chart your cycle. You will leave that introductory session knowing more about your body than you've ever known before, all about your hormone ebbs and flows, hormone movements, and how to actually take that information that your body is giving you, plot it on a chart to give proper data to a doctor. And I can also help you locate the best doctors that you need. If you have any questions or don't have the ability to put in the investment for that right now, that's okay. I still want you to have this information, and I still want you to be healthy. And so with that, it costs you nothing to email me. So my email is haley@truthandfertility.com. So that's HALEY. No, there's a million ways to spell that. So it's HALEY@truthandfertility.com. Send me an email. And I also did just get my Instagram up. You guys, you'll see it when you get there. I'm not a social media person. I refuse to be on social media for many reasons, but I wanted you guys to have easy access to me. I wanted you to be able to ask your questions without having to put that financial investment in, because I understand that is a cost. And so I wanted to be more available to answer those questions. So as I'm not posting anymore on my Instagram, I have 3 posts up and that's it. I'm not posting anymore on it, and I'm not going to be doing all of like the algorithm stuff. That's not what I'm going to be doing, but I will look at my DMs and I will answer those and continue to look at those on a regular basis. So that would be just at Truth and Fertility as well, if you wanted to go there to ask your questions, or if you're more, if you just have any more questions, concerns, comments, whatever it is, you're welcome to reach out to me there too. You guys, I just love sharing my passion with you. It's a huge blessing for me to be able to do this on this platform. And I hope it got you pumped up too. So again, truthandfertility.com. You can look more there of what the whole charting your cycle thing might look like. And then at Truth and Fertility for my Instagram to DM me with any questions you have. It was so good talking to you guys this week, and I will be back with another episode for you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, it would be amazing if you could leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously to be able to continue to produce these episodes for you. Remember that these podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, and YouTube. And you can always go to my website, truthandfertility.com, to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.